welcome to the Touring Fan Live. We are live. It is the day before 4th of July. Happy 4th of July early. Happy July 3rd. If you're celebrating around the world, where we do have a lot of listeners, I'm sorry you're working tomorrow while we enjoy the day off eating and drinking. Just to give a quick shout out to Dust Star. It is a band out of Texas. The song you just heard is Nothing in My Head. They are a political pop punk band out of Texas. They, a couple months ago, sent us out, or one of their fans sent us a song and said, hey, you guys should listen to this. I dug it, so we put it on. That's Dust Star, Nothing in My Head. So give them a listen, give them a like, and go from there. Trey Bush, it has been a while, buddy. How have you been?
I've been good. I thought, just jumping on here and, we know what the climate's like right now. So it's a harder question to ask today than it was 6 months ago. That's for sure. But outside of the outside distractions, we're good. Holly and I's good. Kids are good. We just got back from our anniversary vacation to Maui, where we did 7 days of nothing, which was great.
Nice.
Did our best to stay off our devices and not pay attention to what's going on. So, yeah, other than that, man, I mean, I think there's a reason we're doing this show tonight. I have a feeling that a lot of people are feeling the same way we are. So,
first of all, I need to apologize. We were supposed to do a show last month. I got into another car wreck, totaled my van, which put me through, I got stuck in a tornado, wrecked my van. So put me through like a whole weird situation, had to get a new van, put everything on the back burner, really push everything out of the way. And then I've been on steroids for a while. It's kind of put me in a limbo.
You're looking pumped, by the way. I mean, jacked.
Plump.
Your neck is huge.
Plump. Yeah, I feel like I need a fucking bra. I feel like I need a turtleneck to cover this. Get out of here with that shit.
Your voice keeps on going up and down.
Oh God. Oh great. You see, now I'm going through puberty. The steroids are fucking with me. Then I've been training really hard and I really should have been doing better, but I had my first bike race last weekend. So I did a 50-mile bike race, and I'm training for another half a marathon in 2 weeks. And so my mind hasn't been in it. And to be honest with you, it's just been a weird time in general. Everything's just weird. It's just everything. I don't know who we could talk about things. Everything is weird. Not like, you remember the Lego song from that movie, Everything is Awesome? I don't know. I think Everything is Weird should be the new fucking song that comes out. But,
yeah.
I messaged you the other day because I'm like, listen, 4th of July is coming up. And I think one of the key things that Pearl Jam is known for nowadays is for their activism, utilizing their music to be very much a platform for change, to use their fame in ways to try to educate and to push the ideas that they believe in onto their fans, and not in push in a negative way, but to educate. I think educate's the key word tonight. And there's something I want to say. I know that Pearl Jam has fans from both sides of the table, and I'm not saying tonight that I'm here to change anyone's mind about anything, or I'm not here to push any political agenda on anybody whatsoever. You can believe whatever you want to believe. With tomorrow being 4th of July, I, in my opinion, I believe that you have the freedom to believe what you want to believe, to say what you want to say, and to do really what you want to do legally. And, we might not agree on that, but it doesn't mean that I can't have a beer with you and talk about it. And I think tonight we have 10 topics about Pearl Jam. We're going to talk about the song Bush Leaguer, is that no matter what, don't let anything that's coming out from the news or anything in general that's coming out from any politician from either side of the platform change the way that you look at somebody or believe in someone. Have conversations, have difficult conversations, because sometimes educating and learning from others is a great thing. And that's what we're going to be doing tonight, and talking about how Pearl Jam utilizes their fame and their platform to educate and to really push what they believe in onto their fans in a way that's educational.
I completely agree with you wholeheartedly. The hard part is getting those people to sit down across the table from you, though,
Ain't that the truth?
Well, actually, that's not the hard part. Hard part is actually getting them to listen to you. And you know what I mean? They can hear you.
Yeah.
Or they can listen to you, but are they hearing you? That's what I mean.
Point.
So, and those are different things. Listening to you is one thing, but actually hearing what you have to say and processing that. And that's where we are right now, is we you know, uh, I feel like I've been listening and hearing a lot from the other side, but it's just everything that I hear is fucking awful, you know. So, and then the rest of us are in an echo chamber, me talking to you, you talking to me, you talking to your friends that all feel the same way we do and stuff. And, you know, so yeah,
Well,
that was one of the things I wrote down tonight. Actually, there was, I'm trying to remember I think it was song Grievance or something. I can't remember which song it was, but there was a song that, Eddie had written, and he did an interview about it. This is in the early 2000s, and he made note of the fact that um, where we are headed as a society, especially this digital age that we live in, we all live on our phones, and we live on these apps. We don't live talking to each other. We're not sitting across the table talking to each other. Like, you would never say 99% of the things that you see people write on social media. You would never say that to someone if they were sitting right across from you. You know what I mean?
totally agree.
Like, it would be a conversation of some sort. But now that we have these, there's almost like, this a protective wall of, you don't know that who that person is, and they're not going to do anything to you or whatever. So you feel like you have the power to say whatever you want without any consequences, which is just terrible.
Yeah, we live in a weird world, but I would say this though. If you look at the way history plays in music in general, because tonight I want to talk mostly about how music and politics and the way of life have really changed. There's always a changing guard, right? When I mean guard, I mean
Yeah.
like whether a leader or local leadership and stuff like that. And then musicians, artists, because that's something we could talk about a little bit too, use their platform and to try to make change. And a lot of times, they're not heard, or maybe that looked into a certain way, or maybe it's not coming across in a way, and some people want to shut that down, or some people want to ignore it. But I will say this: the best advice I was ever given in my entire life when it came to politics or into disagreeing with somebody, and we've had disagreements on the show, not about politics
Mhm.
per se, but like music or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Is try to understand the person you're speaking to into their shoes, right? Like, how is
Yeah.
that coming across from him? Because here's the thing, and it's almost like I talked to someone recently about, they live a certain lifestyle, and and some people don't agree with it. And maybe they don't agree with it because they don't understand it. And maybe if they understood it, maybe they'd be living that lifestyle. But instead of just harshly downplaying it, or being so, I don't understand how someone can be so passionate against something that it almost turns into a Red Sox Yankees rivalry, that you're almost like so against it you're willing to fight for that. There's nothing that I disagree with in this world, that like, whether it's a choice of life or how someone looks or how someone dresses or whatever. Like, if that's what you want to do and you're comfortable with it, that's fine. That's on you. That's your agenda. Like, you might not like the way I dress, but who cares? But it doesn't
Well,
mean that
you're
we
a
have to fight
fabulous
about it.
dresser, Anthony.
I don't know about that. I mean, I'm digging deep in my closet now to find shit to fit around this fucking chest I got growing. Sooner or later, I'll be taking
I'll
photos like
have
Holly. We're gonna be.
I'll have Holly send some lingerie out for you.
I appreciate it. On the next episode of Touring Fan.
So I mean, my new Instagram account for you, Anthony.
Okay, come up with a great name. But all right, so listen, here are the 10 topics we're going to talk about right after we get into what we're drinking this evening. One, we're going to talk about the historical context of activism in music when it comes to Pearl Jam, lyrics, a tool for change when it comes to what lyrics and how they utilize it for it, support of environmental causes, concerts as a platform for advocacy, fan engagement and activism, resistance against corporate influences, support for LGBTQ rights, political statements with their music videos, collaboration with other artists and activists, and then finally, a legacy of activism in rock music when it comes to Pearl Jam. But before we dig into that, first, I don't
It's
know
a
if you
4-hour
realize.
show, everybody.
No.
Strap in.
This will not be a 4-hour show. This will not be a 4-hour show. I've tried to keep this organized. I feel like our shows that are about an hour to an hour 10 minutes long are most popular. But with that being said, next month's a big month. I don't know if you realize this. Next month will be 5 years since we did our first show.
Ooh, is that right?
5 years. And it kills me because you messaged me a couple weeks ago and you're like, hey, you want to come to Seattle because you're doing something in Seattle? And I'm like, I can't because I'll be in Portland seeing Nine Inch Nails with Brad and Sam. And then I looked at the date, and the date that you're doing that podcast, that you're doing that thing at the London Bridge Studios is literally 5 years to the day that we did our first show.
Come on. Well, you can miss a concert for that.
No, I'm not missing. Listen, I love Nine Inch Nails, and it's been a long time since I've seen them.
Fine.
Sorry to be a buzzkill. I wish I had a button to to do something. All right, there we go. All right, so let's dig into this. What are you drinking tonight, Trey?
I am drinking. I went back to the Wayback Machine and was going around my cellar. I was like, I'm trying to find something. I wanted to find something in the time frame that I remember when I really thought about Pearl Jam being a really political activist band. For me, when I listened to those first 5 albums, and we're going to dig into this tonight. I know we are, and we'll go back and find songs. I related to those songs as just great music, and they made me feel good, or they made me feel a certain way. But I wasn't really glomming on to some hardcore messaging, especially political from the standpoint. And it really, for me, it wasn't until Binaural and Riot Act the George Bush years when they really were very outspoken, especially lyrically and musically stuff. So I found it's my only bottle I have left. Wow. 2004, Basil Cellars. Now this is a winery I made wine at from 2002 all the way through 2006 before I started Sleight of Hand in 2007. So I was the winemaker. He hadn't owned this winery, but this was the winery that I was the winemaker at, and kind of developed a lot of my following while I was at this winery. There's 100% Cab Franc from the 2004 vintage. It's from Sheldon Milley Vineyard, which is a vineyard that I'd worked with when I was at Dunham Cellars prior to moving over to Basil. I used that vineyard for a couple of years at Sleight of Hand, and then we ended up dropping it. But 21-year-old bottle of Cab Franc, and it is rocking good. It's in great shape. Still very fresh, not tired. Look at the cork on this thing. This is a 21-year-old. You see that? 21-year-old cork. Look at that. Barely even seep through the edge of that.
Can I ask you a question, Trey? When you drank that wine, because you've already had a sip of it, how music can bring us back to a time, or a poster can bring us back to time. When drinking that wine, does that bring back memories you haven't thought about in a long time?
I mean, I for sure, yes, drinking old wines absolutely makes me think back to, for me, I think about that vintage. I think about what the growing season was like that vintage, whether it was a good growing season, a hard growing season. 2004 was actually a very interesting year. Washington had one of the coldest winters we ever had. We had a freeze in, I think, December or January. Hold on one second. Holly's going to burlesque practice.
Oh,
we had a freeze. We had a freeze in 2004, in the winter of 2004. I believe it was January. Got down to 20 below zero. Jesus. Walla Walla lost almost every grape. We had to cut all of our vines to the ground.
Oh my God.
And at the time, our winery, we were mostly estate fruit. So most of our fruit was coming from Walla Walla. So we had hardly any fruit to work with that year. And Chateau Ste. Michelle, the largest winery in Washington, and also the largest vineyard holding company in Washington, came to all of the wineries in Walla Walla. We had a meeting. I remember the meeting. It was in like March, and they said, "Hey, we'll make available to you anything you need to make wine from our
Wow.
vineyards." So all the wines that I made from 2004 were outside of the Walla Walla Valley. They were all Columbia Valley wines at the time. And now this particular bottle, the Sheldon Millie Vineyard, was a contract and a grower that I had been working with already for several years. So this was outside of that offering from St. Michel. But that's the only reason we really made a lot of wine that year, or any wine, was because Chateau Ste. Michelle came to us and offered us. So we were able to keep our production levels at the same level. And it was a very good vintage as far as winemaking goes. It was a good growing season. People think of the '04 vintage as a tough vintage, but only because of the freeze. But the actual growing season was fantastic.
Hmm.
And this wine's a testament to that for sure. So, and this was my third vintage on my own. And really my first vintage where I felt like, okay, I'm sort of stepping outside of the shadows of where I got my training. I'm making some decisions now that maybe the other winery I used to work for wouldn't have probably made these decisions. Or, I guess I started doing things a little differently starting in '04. And so, yeah. But again, this is, that sort of binaural riot act time frame. And I thought, this would be a fun wine to pull. I had no idea. I haven't had this bottle of wine in probably 5 years
Wow.
because, I only had a few bottles left. And so to see that it's still kicking is awesome.
That is awesome. I like the
Yeah.
story behind it too. I think the one thing I've always appreciated about you, especially like when we first met, was how you did things that you believed in. Like that you're talking about, like this is this is when you really started thinking outside the box and making changes that were different that some of the wineries you were learning from or you were working with might not have done. And this is kind of like the building blocks or the foundation you were building to get into what you have now, and that's pretty
Mhm.
amazing. So.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. Thank you. Anyway, it's delicious. So what are you drinking tonight?
Tonight, our good friend Brad, when he came out here to go see Jack White with me, he brought me a bunch of stuff, and one of them was this. So I'm drinking beer tonight. I'm actually off steroids, so I'm drinking something a little bit different. So it's called Barrel Age. It's from Fremont. The Barrel Age Dark Star. It's a 2018 limited release, and it is delightful. I don't know too much about the.
Yeah, so Fremont Brewing Company is one of the older
Um,
breweries in Seattle.
okay.
And that's a barrel aged. I don't know if they call it a stout, but it's a dark beer, obviously. Did you get a glass for it? Let's
Yes, I'm
see it.
drinking a glass. Hold on, I got my glasses on because you told me to. See if we were. Hold on a second.
Um,
It is barreled aged. Yes, imperial oatmeal stout aged
yeah,
in bourbon barrels. Oh fuck me.
yeah. Oh,
Oh
it's so
no.
good.
Oh no.
Oh,
You
it's
told me to
so
stay. You
good.
told me to stay away from the barrels that are aged and the gimmicky. But
No,
this
this
is
is the
good.
beer. I told you to stay away from the wines that were aged in the gimmicky. That's what I told you. Beer. That's the beauty of breweries and being a brewer.
Yeah.
Is they have the freedom to do anything they want without being judged, um, with what they make. They can add fruit stuff, they can add lactose, they can all add whatever they wanna do and make
Yeah.
these really cool beers. And that's why, the fun part about going to a brewery is, looking at the menu of all the new stuff they have, not just going in and ordering the same thing every time.
Yeah.
Uh, we're bound by Wineries are bound by, tradition in a much stricter way, I think. So, it needs to be taken seriously.
Oh, well, I take you
Yeah,
very serious. I take you very serious, and tonight's topics are going to be very serious.
it is
Um,
very serious.
but yeah, no,
What'd you
this
think
is
of that beer, by the way? Do you like it?
I do. I like it a lot. So I do like a
Yeah.
dark beer, and it's been a while since I've drank a dark beer, and this is fantastic. I love this a lot. I know.
Yeah, they make a beer called the Bee Bomb, which is also, they almost have there's a sweetness to them, and they're almost chocolatey,
this is very yeah.
Yeah, and check out the alcohol level on that.
Oh, I don't know. It's gonna be interesting when I go to see fireworks here in a little bit.
You
Let's see
know,
alcohol. The alcohol level on this is 13.6 per volume.
That might be higher than my wine. My wine's 15.1, so no, it's close. I was making some boozy wines back then.
There you are, you living it up, living it up. But all right, let's jump right into these topics, shall we?
Yeah.
So the first topic we're talking about is the historical context of activism in music. And if you look at Pearl Jam, when you look at how they utilized like what's going on in the world at certain times and how they can utilize their music in sense to, I guess, show how they're feeling, right? When you think about, like, for instance, you were talking about when Riot Act came out, George Bush era, that you almost know that the music on there is really historical to that time because the music is made because of how the band felt as things were going on at that time. 9/11 and so much around those moments. And it is, and when you think about how that activism is, that's how they're active on things. Even, I mean, you'll see Eddie out and doing, I remember there was this really famous picture back in the day of him with a guitar over his shoulder and he was marching and there was a big piece like sticker or a painting on the back of his acoustic guitar. He was walking around. I think it was in Rolling Stone magazine. But it was him doing what he believed in at that time, right? I mean, that's what it is. I mean, if you look at like how Pearl Jam used a lot of like even earlier 80s punk rock activism and how they utilize their music to really push a message through, I feel as though the band really utilized their, I guess, that grunge era and sound kind of almost took a slice of pie from how the punk rock activism came and how Pearl Jam approached their music and messaging in the same sense that they did. But it just maybe not in such a more, different tone per se.
Yeah, I mean, if you really want to get down to it, Anthony, music has, as far back as you can think about music, I mean, Bob Dylan, 1963, 64, he wrote Masters of War, right?
Yeah.
Masters of War. Think about that. I mean, he wrote that, maybe wrote that in 66, 67, whenever he wrote that. But folk singers inherently were writing political songs to get their messaging across to people. And so, Woody Guthrie in the 50s, I mean, they were that was their platform for delivering their message. And I think we've said it before where it's like, gosh, a great song is, do you have to have pain, you have to have there has to be some deep emotional thing that happens to a writer to be able to dive into that, to go create. You don't create beautiful art out of nothing. You got to create beautiful art out of something. Well, that something isn't always beautiful things. Sometimes the something is painful and hurtful, and that's where they create that incredible art from. And that's painters, and that's singers, and that's sculptors, and that's writers, and it's anyone that creates art in general. Hopefully they're tapping into something. They are tapping into something to be able to create that greatness. And the Clash, I mean, most political band ever, I mean, so, it's not like it's a surprise. We had these conversations about Pearl Jam and you're like, oh, I can't believe they're singing this song about Bush Leaguer. And, the time frames when that was. I remember the Seattle show when Pearl Jam played Bush Leaguer, and there was this talk of all these, people walking out during that song because of the message that Eddie said before or after the song. I don't remember when he gave a little speech and then he went into it,
Mm-hmm.
And first of all, I don't remember anybody walking out, but I'm sure there were a few people. But if the song didn't offend somebody, then it probably wasn't that great of a song. You know what I mean?
It was doing its job.
you want to get some reaction,
Correct.
you don't want everyone to agree with you. I mean, the point being is the same way we just talked about the beginning of the show, to be able to sit down across from somebody and have a conversation. Well, Eddie's conversation is through the radio and through the microphone
Correct.
and through the songs, and so his, again, you can listen to the song, but are you hearing it? And he's hoping that there might be somebody that thinks differently than he does that may actually hear that and go, "Oh, you know what? I see your point."
Yeah,
So
100%. And it's just not Pearl Jam. I mean, think about here's some
oh yeah,
bands that I've written down that really are artists that do make that were political bands that had song lyrics, that had songs that were that were caused by the times they were living in, that they felt a certain way. Anti-Flag, Bad Religion, Black 47, Black Flag, The Clash,
yeah,
CCR, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, Dead Kennedys, Dropkick Murphy, Green Day, Jefferson Airplane, Megadeth, Midnight Oil, NWA, of course, Pearl Jam, Peter, Paul and Mary, Public Enemy, Pussy Riot
yep,
was a huge one, Rage Against the Machine, Rise Against, Sex Pistols, Sleater Kinney, Bruce Springsteen, System of a Down, U2. These are all bands that are, majority of those bands are all nationally known, almost
correct.
a kitchen table known. Everybody knows U2. Everybody knows Springsteen. Everyone knows System of a Down. These. I mean, Public Enemy. Maybe you don't know Pussy Riot, but I mean, the idea of what Pussy Riot did when they were coming out and being so, just like so against what Russia was doing at the time and how they were utilizing their music to make a change and went to jail and all. It's insanity, but
Right.
but if it wasn't for how they were feeling, their art was never created. So that's always a crazy thing. So that's the activism behind how something can cause a change in a dynamic to make them have the music come out.
Yeah. Yeah, for
Which
sure.
which also comes an idea of like, so our next topic, lyrics is a tool for change. If you think about Pearl Jam in general, right? And I have some lyrics up here, of how they use their lyrics. You know that these lyrics are 100% driven by the climate in the world, how things are going on in the world, and how they feel. Most recently, think about the song "Can't Deny Me," right? Lyrics like you plant your living seed, watch as the roots take hold. The country you are now poisoning, condition critical. I mean such a strong message of dissent and concern. I mean, listen to the chorus. The higher, the farther, the faster you fly. You may be rich, but you can't deny me. Get nothing but the will to survive. You can't control it. You can't deny me. It's all it is defiance and resistance. It's just, and that's what the band talks about. Just, like, don't let this, whatever's coming over, oppress you and really push you down. And that's just one song. I mean, Grievance is something you talked about a little while ago. I mean, that was inspired by the 1999 WTO protest. And I mean, and it critiques unchecked technological advances and the potential to, like, really kind of screw us in our freedom. And then, that's when Eddie said, like, for every tool they lend us is a loss of independence. And it expresses concern of like how technology, you get it and it's great, but realistically, it's just them getting that much closer to you and taking away something in its own sense. So
Yep.
grievance is an interesting thing. And
Yep.
then one more.
Yeah, that was yeah, I don't know if you did you see that, I looked up an article from the magazine called George Magazine. Is that the
Mhm.
one same one you saw?
So my lyric is from Rolling Stone magazine in 2001.
Okay, yeah, the one I saw was Eddie was talking about grievance, and he says, "That's what I talk about in grievance, about the dangers and what a lot of people don't see or don't wanna see." There's the line. For every tool they lend us a lot, is that what you said? Yeah. So
Yeah,
there's the line. For every yeah, it's true, everything happens so fast. The technology is supposed to make everything simple and easy, tries to make us believe that it's some sort of freedom that we have. Of course, it's easy and comfortable if you can do all your shopping on the internet, if you don't need to leave the house to do anything. But on the other hand, what's going to happen? You lose touch with people. You don't meet new people
correct.
except on the internet. And whatever you can do can be traced. They know everything about you.
Everything.
So,
Well,
yeah.
look at the song Wreckage off of the most recent album, Dark Matter, right?
Yeah.
This 100% addresses the political landscape and especially references Donald Trump's actions. In an article from Spin Magazine, Eddie Vedder describes the song as a reflecting on someone who is lost on an election but continues to claim victory and spread misinformation. He suggested the song encourages people to avoid being divided by individuals and individuals lacking worthy causes. Now, this is once again Eddie utilizing his platform as a singer of one of the greatest bands in American history to be a voice of something that he feels passionate about. Once again, tonight I'm not telling you what we're saying is right or wrong, because I'm not trying to do that. Like, I'm not. This is not what this show's about. We're not a political show by any means. Me and Trey have our opinions, but we're stating facts. This is how the band does, and I think Pearl Jam does a really great job of utilizing their platform and how they feel to distribute information, educate people on how they feel and why they should look further into things. Don't let the information that's coming out from the news or from your elected officials be the only thing you believe. Ask questions, dig deeper into things. That's what it's all about. I mean, there's so many songs. I mean, Jeremy, you think about Jeremy and how that song and those lyrics and that story about a school shooting and someone going into things, being in a time where there was so much going on in the world. That song, a lot of people don't realize how emotionally driven it is because of an action someone took, and that's why they're so anti-gun. So
yeah, white male American, same way.
You can go.
That
God,
was
so many.
Eddie hanging out and just happened to have a African American guy sitting next to him, and the cops rolling up on him, and they didn't even bother Eddie, and he looked like he just, according to the story, he looked like he just woke up and could have been a homeless guy, but they didn't even bother him. So he was an eye-opening experience for him at that moment, and it's a laundry list of songs that you could go through, and again, especially that first album with 10, you can dive into some of those songs and find, what you will call, I guess, political, political content or whatever, but it really is more social content that politicians are the ones who are trying to control a lot of the, social stuff, right? Like homelessness or, access to mental health, right? Like
Sure.
there's a lot of mental health stuff in there, right? Well, that is a political issue now. We're trying to get access for veterans to, they're not committing suicide and stuff, and increasing the VA, all these things. So it may be a social. It might be a social message, but if the social messages, they end up being political because we do have to pass laws one way or the other to address them. You know what I mean? We have to make money available through the government to address these things. So in a way, a lot of this stuff, even though they may not be political in nature, they are political in nature because it takes politics to solve some of this stuff. So,
yeah. And if you think about like going into our next topic, which talks about environmental causes in the band and how to use a platform for this, I mean, it's just not, Pearl Jam is just not 100% just about politics. It's not about politicians. They really, they're not they're not focused on just one thing. They really see a lot of issues, and they're not just one box. It's like, hey, this is affecting all of our fans. How can we get involved?
Yes. Yeah. The reality is like I said, they're all social issues that just happen to have, political leaning. So whether it's, Surf Rider, Eddie and Surf Rider, you're talking about the environmental causes, Jeff in his home state of Montana, trying to save all the, state lands and all the natural areas that they have out there, just not even Montana, just on the West Coast in general. I mean, I remember in the late 90s in Seattle, we had the WTO riots. I don't know if you remember that at all.
Yep.
But that was, that was another eye opener for just on a local level, like I was working in downtown Seattle the night those riots were going on. I was working at Nordstrom down there, and I had to stagger out and go catch a ferry to get home that night. And that was, not that it was necessarily terrifying. It wasn't like I was afraid for my life,
Gee.
but it was like, holy shit, there are some pissed off people here,
Yeah.
you know? And so, yeah, I mean, I appreciate the fact that this band recognizes they have this very powerful platform, and I feel like they utilize it very well.
Yeah.
They understand that they have the ability to get whatever messaging they want, and you know, for me, thankfully, their messaging is in par with my messaging. That what they believe, and it's not like they told me to believe it. It's you know I have a conscience.
Yeah.
I know what empathy is. And it probably sounds ironic coming from them now. And I say that because these guys are worth tens of millions of dollars, if not hundreds of millions of dollars, at least Eddie, right? So it there is some irony in some of his messaging. However, they're not also not just using their words, right? They have the Vitology Foundation, which they set up, which
Yep.
they donate tens of millions of dollars to incredible organizations, not just in Seattle, but all around the world, uh, for so many different causes, everything that we've been talking about, all these social issues that we've been talking about. So they do back it up with action. They're not
Correct.
just, hey, wouldn't it be great if, we all held hands and did this? It's like, no, we are going to go out and we're going to raise $10 million for the home shows, and we're going to figure out a way to address our homelessness issue.
Yeah.
We're going to try to figure out a way to get, you know, tackle the drug abuse issue in Seattle. And so they do back up their words with action, and you can't say that about everybody.
No, I do think a lot of artists do speak a large game, like they say, "Hey, we're gonna do things." I think one instance for me was, the one another band that really backs up what they say is, Dropkick Murphys recently just did a concert in Washington D.C. Based off of, they had a lot of union workers out there that were nervous about losing some benefits and stuff based off of some policies that were going through, and Dropkick Murphys were vocal in what they were doing and they were standing for it. And listen, a lot of people can say one thing and do another, but I mean, kind of going back to the whole environmental thing. I mean, think of Pearl Jam in 2020 during the pandemic put out an album that really legitimately was a lot of environmental causes. I mean, the album called Gigaton, when you talk about it, was a gigaton of of ice caps that are melting yearly, and how that affects our climate and control. I mean, it's wild that they would take their art, which is their album, and basically turn it into a political statement in the how things are affecting the environment and how the world works and things. And the band constantly does that. Now, if you look at things like Quick Escape, Retrograde, Dark Matter, Amongst the Waves, these are all songs that really are driven by the idea, and the logic and the lyrics are based off environmental change and how the band utilizes that. And they preach it, they sing about it, they write about it, they raise money for it. They're doing everything they need to do without them just going to Antarctica and buying a big freezer and trying to freeze everything back up again. I mean,
Yeah,
they're literally trying to do everything they possibly can. And just like you said, I mean, not only that, like, they're utilizing their concerts truly as a platform to get the word out. During during Gigaton, the Gigaton tours, which, I will say this too. A lot of people shit on Gigaton. Give it a new listen. I'm telling you, Gigaton is not nearly as bad as people make it out to be. I do enjoy Gigaton a lot more than people give it a bad rap for, but that album and that tour really always do their best to try to make people educated and aware of what's going on in the world when it comes to affecting us. Because here's the thing, the reason why they're so passionate about these things, not only is it for themselves and not only for their fans, but it's for the future of their families. A lot of everyone in that, I think everyone, I don't know about Josh, but most of the people in the band have kids, and they're trying to get that lifespan going and getting families built. and they're just doing this for the best for the future. I mean, so it's crazy. And then the one thing you said, which kind of goes into the next topic, and then there's a couple of comments I want to get to here in a minute because we've kind of getting active here on YouTube. Fan engagement activism. I will say this. Now, I know a lot of people know my distaste for a person that runs an organization. It is what it is. But I will say this. The band helped create a group of fans back in the early 2000s to create an organization called the Wishlist Foundation. Now, I don't necessarily agree with some of the things behind the scenes, but what they actually do as an organization, the money they raised and the policies they've kind of helped change when they went to different cities and they kind of had the people from those cities join those pre-parties to focus change they had voting, pledge to vote, register to vote. They raised money for politicians, raised money for great causes. Those things don't exist. Wishlist Foundation doesn't exist. The Touring Fan Live, where me and Trey, myself and Rhiannon, myself and Michelle, different things, we wouldn't have raised the money we raised. The Wishlist Foundation wouldn't raise the money they raised. The different pre-parties there's been small groups. Over in England, there's the unicorns that have raised a shit ton of money for different things. None of those exist without Pearl Jam making the efforts in themselves and their fans to go out and push and do things. And because of them and them taking those activism forefront, they educated us in a way to go out in the world and do good and to make changes that we believe in. The band might not agree with some of the things we're doing, but in the sense, they created a change in us that wanted to make a change in the world. And that's fucking rare, Trey. If you think about it, listen, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong for saying this. I don't think that, I don't think Puff Daddy has fans going out and making fucking change for Cure. I don't think they're doing that. There's not people but Pearl Jam fans are. And I think there's a passion behind them to do good. And that's what's really fucking cool about this band.
Yep. Yeah, I was going to bring up our benefit last year for Smash and raising all that money for a great organization here in Seattle, which, that is, hometown thing. But none of that would have happened without the band existing. I shouldn't say none of it would have happened, but it wouldn't have happened in the way that it did happen. How about that?
Correct.
You and I wouldn't know each other without this band. So
100%.
There's a lot to be said about that. Inspiring their fan base to be active in their communities, is pretty fucking awesome.
It is.
And Pearl Jam does a really great job with that. Because in the end, even though they may be railing against a political party or railing against, what they're really doing is they're raising the awareness every time they speak about it, every time they sing about it, for us to think about it, and then we're like, okay, yeah, shit, what can we do about that? Does that mean is that a letter to your congressperson? Is that a phone call to your local? Even on a local level, on a community level, a city, county-wide, there's probably hundreds, if not thousands, of folks who have maybe taken that first step to do some good. Even if that means picking up trash on the side of the road with their, school or something, maybe because of Pearl Jam.
Yeah.
And so you can't fault them for that,
I totally agree with you. One of the comments that came through from a gentleman named Vinyl Dude 82 on YouTube says, Pearl Jam finds the way the band can help push initiatives forward that reflect the band members' collective consciousness. They use their platform to shed light on great causes that are less familiar to many. I totally agree with that.
Yeah, 100%.
On the text in line, Jake says, is there anything that Pearl Jam has done that you don't agree with? Has the band ever done anything that made you mad and didn't want to see them? So this is one thing that I will say, and I'm going to speak just on my behalf, and I'll let Trey answer in a second. I go see artists that I like. I'm not going to go see a band that's like, spewing Nazi rhetoric or something like that. That's not, but if
I can see right behind you. There's a Kid Rock ticket stub right behind you up there.
Get the fuck out of here. But I listen, I observe, and I educate. And just because someone believes a certain thing doesn't mean that I am going to jump into exactly what they believe in. Pearl Jam's never said anything or done anything that's made me upset by any means whatsoever.
Yeah.
I actually appreciate people that are passionate about something enough to go out and fight for it, whether I agree with it or not. I mean, I'm not saying that I do or I don't, but I just believe that if you're going to say something, because in this world we live in, and it kind of goes back to grievance, the once the keyboard was invented and put in front of us and the internet was created, there's a lot of people that go online and they click clack away and they just cause more harm than good.
Yeah.
And they spew a lot of things that they don't back up. It is what it is. Pearl Jam, since the album 10, has said things they believe in. They have fought for those things, whether you agree with them or not. They have gone out, they have fought for ideas that they did agree with or they didn't agree with. They fought for politicians they didn't like and they liked, and they backed them no matter what. And if you like them, great. And if you didn't like them, there's the exit sign. Nassau Coliseum, when they came out right after 9/11 and did Bush Leaguer, there was, I mean, if you saw Pearl Jam 20, you saw in the front row was a lot of police officers that loved Pearl Jam, but maybe didn't agree with the message that was coming out at that time because of how they maybe felt with how things were going. Whether you
Yeah.
agree or disagree, that's your interpretation. That's how you believe. I'm not telling you to agree with one way or the other. But it shows you how a band can make you feel. It can make you feel good, make you feel bad, make you feel uneasy, make you disagree with them, make you agree with them. The only bands that can do that are good bands, because there's a lot of bands out there that put a lot of shitty lyrics out and a lot of shitty music out that means absolutely nothing, and then they're forgotten about. In 30, 40, 50 years, 60, 70 years, when we're all long gone, Pearl Jam's music will still be relevant to certain people in this world because it will make them feel a certain way to make change. And that's why Pearl Jam's so special.
Yeah, no arguments from me at all. Yeah, I same for me. They've never put anything out that's quote unquote either offended me or that I didn't agree with. And it's I feel like it's because we're on the same sort of emotional spectrum, I guess is the best way I want to put it. Like again, I have empathy for people. And uh, I'm a veteran, so if anyone has a right to stand up and say what I think about, American politics and war and all that stuff, I certainly earned it. And, um, when 9/11 happened and, there was this very fervent patriotism, um, for America, and all these shouts to bomb the living shit out of the Middle East. Um, I can see how people would get swept up in that because of what a horrible act 9/11 was. Um, but I feel that there's a similarity between, and you're right, Anthony. This isn't a political show, but we are talking about politics today, so I'm going to bring this up. But there's a very similar thread between what's going on in Palestine and Israel right now. And it is really disturbing and alarming when you watch an entire group of civilians. These are civilians. These aren't soldiers. These aren't people who signed up for the army to go, do this or that. These are women and children. These are people making a living as best they can in one of the most difficult places in the world to do that. And to sit idly by and watch that happen without making statements and stuff is criminal. And when Pearl Jam made those comments when the world was so behind, like, yes, let's go bomb the shit out of these people, and look what they did to us in New York, and you're bombing people who didn't do anything. You know what I mean? And so in the end, you're like, I can't the war, what is it good for? Absolutely nothing. I
Yeah.
mean, how many times do we have to scream that? And so, you know, I, it again, I understand why people felt that way at that time, but especially now when you have revisionist history and you go back and look at who we bombed, and then you say, well, why do we bomb them? Well, they didn't do anything. They didn't have this, they didn't have that. You know what I mean? The entire George Bush government and him and Dick Cheney made up half that shit. And so, you know, I would ask the folks who walked out of that show, gosh, do they feel this? Would they feel the same way now that they have real information in front of them? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then again, that goes back to, can you sit down with those people and have a conversation with them without them, you know,
Not
can they
listening.
hear you? Can you hear them, and can they hear you? So
There was an old saying my social studies teacher, his name was Mr. Atchison. He was when I lived in Maine, and he used to tell kids, he's like, put bubble gum in your right ear. And at that time, I was like, what the fuck does it put bubble gum in your right ear? And he'd always say that when we were doing like really hard topics. And he's like, we're going to talk about things that you might not agree with, or your family might not agree with, but just listen and understand and put bubble gum in your right ear. And it wasn't until, I don't know, about 6-7 years ago, he got cancer and I emailed him and I was like, hey, I'm really sorry that you're battling cancer. You made a big positive influence on me. It was one of those things. And I asked him, like, what the fuck did it mean when you said put bubble gum in your right ear? For years, asked him. And he said, the majority of people let things go in one ear and out the other. But if you put bubble gum in your right ear, you're going to listen and observe and let it sink in. And he goes, I always said that because I wanted people to take that information in and didn't let it go in one ear and out the other. Take it in, whether you agree with it or not, and utilize that information to make a change. And it's weird because when I was like, 16 hearing this shit, I was like, what the fuck does this mean? Nowadays, I'm like, it's a pretty powerful thing to say because a lot of people, it goes in one ear and out the other, especially if it's not something they agree with. So,
yeah, parents today would call that indoctrination.
yeah.
In other words, if the parents didn't agree with what the teacher was trying to teach, or even a topic they were talking about, they'd say, "Oh, they're indoctrinating my kid. They want my kid to be gay."
Mm.
you know,
Jesus.
it's so fucking stupid. Oh
And
God,
and and
we are the dumbest fucking country on the planet. Do you
it was
recognize that?
you want to hear something too? It's and I didn't think I was going to bring this up today, but I saw the new Jurassic Park movie today. And there's a part in the movie that the guy was talking about how, like, isn't it crazy that dinosaurs lived for millions of years and we've only been and then humans have only been around for so much longer, like 200,000 250,000, where the fuck it was. And he's like, you do realize we're never going to survive longer than them because we're too smart for our own good. And he goes, instead of just surviving in the moment, we're always trying to overtake and destroy, and that is going to be our downfall, and we'll never survive longer than the dinosaurs. And I was like, holy shit. I was like,
Yeah.
how the fuck is Jurassic World making up? But hey, use your platform, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's not wrong. I mean, it almost makes you want to. You're like, I look at both my, two of my daughters are old enough to have kids, 26 and 19, and I'm like, I don't even know if I can almost guarantee you my oldest daughter's not going to have kids.
Mm.
Chloe, I don't know. My middle daughter, June, she's 13. So, but uh, it's weird to think you're like, who would fucking bring a kid into the world right now? You know what I mean?
Well,
Like, we don't even know if America is going to survive at this point.
well,
you know?
I will say this though. This would be my statement on that, is that if you want to have kids, you raise them right and you put, I guess, the bubble gum in the right ear, as my teacher once said, and you educate them to listen and to do what they believe is right and not just, I don't know. There's such a cult like mentality nowadays where people,
Mhm.
like, they can't believe, like, I've always I don't take everything verbatim. I always got to educate and learn and fucking dig deeper. There's so there's so many people that just like they buy into one thing, they jump in, and then that's it. It's over. There, it's like the fucking Manson family. They just jump in, they give up their entire life for
Oh,
one thing,
I
and then
I know what you're talking about. You're talking about religion.
yeah, oh god, yeah, that's a whole hold on, hold on. I
That's
don't
a
even know if
whole
I'm.
nother topic, man.
Oh
Join in next
Jesus,
week
you did join in
for
next week
part
for.
2.
Oh god, wait. Uh,
Uh,
yeah, no, yeah, no. There was there's a new artist out there. Well, and my daughter is getting into her Giggy something, and she has a song called Sailor Song. And there's this lyric in the song that I heard today, and it hit me so hard. It's like, I don't believe in God, but I believe that you could be my savior. And it was like, I don't know, fucking music makes you feel things. And I was like, it's crazy that, I don't know, it's just wild, wild. Anyway, jumping off topic. Sorry about that.
that's all right.
But yeah, so going into some of the final topics, so we could jump into Bush Leaguer. The band utilize music videos when it comes to Do the Evolution to be a political statement. Do the Evolution is 100% it from beginning to end of what they believe is wrong with things. Todd McFarlane did an excellent job designing and implementing that music video to really make you feel a certain way. And it really is an excellent a way of looking into that. I think all the Gigaton music videos that were put out where they had like the environmental causes behind them was a really good way, and it's a storytelling, and it's informal, and it's educating you. I think one of the biggest things too that I want to talk about when it's putting your money where your mouth is, in 2016, once again, whether you agree with it or disagree with it, that's not the case of this evening. The evening is to talk about how a band believes in something, they fight for it, and they do what they're supposed to in their eyes. In 2016, if you went to the Hampton, Virginia Pearl Jam show, you were in line. The 90% of the people that were in line were also going to the Raleigh, North Carolina show, which was the very next day. And the show, while we were about to go into the venue, was canceled. And it was because of a law that was put in place by at that time, the governor or the mayor of North Carolina about having a unisex bathroom, that it should be anyone to be able to use a bathroom wherever they want to. So North Carolina said, no, that's not allowed. You can't do that. It's illegal. And so Pearl Jam felt in a way such that that people shouldn't be, get in trouble for utilizing a bathroom in the way they feel. And they shouldn't get in trouble and get a fine or go to jail. And then a lot of artists, Springsteen was another one at the time. They said, we're not playing North Carolina until you guys get your shit together. And Pearl Jam canceled the show. And it wasn't until this year that they went back to North Carolina, which you're talking about almost 9 years later. But Pearl Jam gave up all of that financial money from that show. They lost money on the show when it came to merchandise, when it came to the overall ticket cost, everything, because it's something they believed in. Now, I would like for you, besides Springsteen, who I just gave you an example of, give me an artist that's willing to take that much a financial loss because of something they believed in. It's hard to do. Yeah. And that's what makes this band special.
Yeah. It came out today. There's an artist I follow named Dan Mangan. And he made a post today and he said, did you know that Live Nation gave $500,000 to the Trump campaign? It just came out. It was under like 4 or 5 different layers of donations, but Live Nation donated $500,000 to the Trump campaign. And, that is, now all of a sudden you have to think about going to see a Live Nation show. You know what I mean? When everyone talks about shut up and sing, all the art, all the fans are like, hey man, I didn't come here to talk about this, that, and the other. Come here and sing. Well, it's the same thing on the back end. It's who's supporting who. Mm-hmm. It's yeah, that's something else. Anyway, when you ask the question about who's willing to who's willing to take a stand. You know, Neil Young, you mentioned Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, but Neil has always been at the forefront of standing 1000% behind his beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he didn't have his music on streaming platforms for a long time because he didn't feel that, you know, they were getting paid fairly.
Correct.
And they're not getting paid fairly. I mean,
No.
but when it comes down to the matter of convenience, people are always going to choose convenience over how it makes them feel,
Correct.
I guess. You know what I mean? You're like,
It's true.
it's whatever it is, you know, it's almost like it is what it is. It doesn't affect me, right?
Yeah.
But you know, it does affect you. It does affect you. And that artist, like, fuck it, I can't do this anymore. You
Yeah.
know, I'm not making any money.
Well, if you look,
So
if you look at a lot of artists, I was looking today. I was making a playlist for a friend of mine in Florida, like of artists and stuff. And I was looking at a lot of artists, and the